behind the blow to Canada's GDP? Kamal.
Marcia, the downturn driven by the ongoing trade war, signaling signs of a possible recession. After months of being assaulted by U.S. tariffs and battered by the ongoing trade war, Canada now showing major cracks in the armor.
This is not a good picture for Canada and what's happening here.
Canada is on the verge of bankruptcy. We have crippling high debt, mortgages that are going to get renewed in mass numbers with the interest rates still being elevated higher than a lot of economists expected. What is going to happen in the next few months? We are going to see potentially a calamity of disaster in the economic sector and in the entire economy for Canadians, especially homeowners. What is going on? Let's discuss it in today's video. This one is going to be a doozy, so strap on that helmet because you might get hurt.
Canada has just set a record, but not the kind you... Canada has just set a record, but not the kind you want to celebrate. In the second quarter of 2025, our current account deficit, basically the scorecard for money flowing in and out of the country, hit minus negative $21 billion. That's the biggest shortfall in our history. But here's the scary part. This isn't just about an economic headline. It's about jobs, trade, and the Canadian dollar in your wallet and the investments you are relying on for your future.
And you can actually just check this on Google. Look at the Canadian dollar compared to a lot of other currencies, and you'll see that it's been declining quite a lot, especially even considering the US dollar, which is actually not historically doing that well. But compared to the Canadian dollar over the last year, it's been climbing in price and the Canadian dollar has been weakening. And it's pretty scary if you're someone who buys a lot from the US because it's going to get harder and harder, especially now just with the tariffs, but also just the fact that the exchange rate is so bad because the Canadian dollar is so weak.
It's behind the blow to Canada's GDP. Kamal.
Marcia, the downturn driven by the ongoing trade war, signaling signs of a possible recession. After months of being assaulted by U.S. tariffs and battered by the ongoing trade war, Canada now showing major cracks in the armor.
This is not a good picture for Canada and what's happening here.
Canada's economy contracted in the second quarter much more than expected, shrinking by 1.6% on an annualized basis. It's the first quarterly contraction in nearly 2 years and the steepest decline since the pandemic.
Essentially, the big change was in the first quarter, we had a rush to get exports out into the U.S. as quickly as possible. In the second quarter, that all came to a halt as some of these tariffs started to take effect.
U.S. President Donald Trump ramped up tariffs against Canada and the world that quarter, targeting steel, aluminum, and autos. While April, May, and June then saw a sharp drop-off in business investment by roughly 10%.
The depth of decline that we're seeing in the manufacturing sector is something that we haven't seen in many years. And so it is a cause for concern.
Vehicle exports plummeting nearly 25%, industrial machinery exports and travel services also falling drastically. In fact, Canada saw an unprecedented trade deficit in the second quarter, with a big gap between its minimal exports versus its massive amount of imports. The difference between the two, a whopping $19.6 billion in goods and services.
I can't believe they actually even use the word recession, because a lot of the time the mainstream news has never used that word, or they try to kind of bypass the word, sidestep it, because they don't want to admit that we're in a recession, because ultimately they are subsidized by the government. When you're admitting that the government is in a recession, it's not looking good for jobs in general in Canada, maybe not even their jobs. So it's interesting to hear them say that. But the trade deficit is definitely one of the reasons why the economy is on the verge of bankruptcy, but it goes way further than that because the country has been mismanaged for over a decade.
Time to check in on Canada's economy because here in the United States, we're concerned about you a little bit. Ever since Trump got into office, he's put tariffs on every country, including Canada, and Canada didn't back down. They basically said, if you want to throw tariffs on us, we'll hit you back with the same tariffs. And even though the United States and Canada are close allies, that didn't stop the leaders of either country from standing on business saying, if you want to play ball, we can play. Except there was a problem that Canada wasn't ready for. They don't have the same type of manufacturing or strength economically that the United States does. And that's evidenced by the fact that Canada was already weak economically when Trudeau was in power. Now they have Carney and things haven't changed. But now we got new numbers showing just how bad it really is in Canada. because we can see that just in June, 541,000 new people are receiving unemployment benefits, bringing the total up to 6.9% of the population. And if you look at Canada's youth between ages of 14 and 24, the unemployment rate for them is 14.6%, the highest it's been since 2010. And Canada has to do something about it, right? Well, here's what they just did. Things have gotten so bad in Canada that they decided that they're going to balk first, and they dropped all the retaliatory tariffs on the United States. So the state of the economy for Canada isn't great. And once Trump put tariffs on them, it got even worse. So Canada may be faced with the same decision that the United States was faced with recently, where it's time to start bringing jobs back to Canada and start actually producing products so you can help that GDP growth and help bring in more revenue and add more jobs. So time will tell what'll happen in Canada, but right now, they could use all the help they can get. If you stuck around till the end, make sure you like and follow this page because I didn't forget about China. They're getting a progress report soon enough.
So the fact that Canada has already had a weakening GDP before Mark Carney came in and then the tariff war started is the reason why we're in such a horrible position right now, with unemployment rising to 7%, youth unemployment almost at 15%, 20% in places like Toronto, which is obviously adding a lot of pressure to the system. It's actually refreshing to see people in the States who are actually concerned about Canada, which is good because there's not a lot of Canadians who are talking about this. That's why I like to bring these videos to you. That's why I like to talk about these subjects that are sometimes painful, because I think ultimately it is better for everyone to be aware of what's actually happening in Canada.
Thinking, okay, so a bunch of charts, data spiked, why should I care? The surge in renewals has an impact on Canadians and the broader economy. The big one is we're seeing the higher payments and affordability getting worse, right? Because many people are now renewing and facing much higher interest rates than they originally had. This means higher mortgage payments for the same mortgage. Imagine just having to pay hundreds more for your mortgage per month when you renew. This is going to be the reality for a lot of households in Canada. And this can really squeeze family budgets. Affordability is still a big issue. We're still hearing about a housing crisis in Canada. It hasn't just magically gone away. And so with budgets tighter, some homeowners might struggle to make all their payments. And we're already seeing more Canadians missing payments on various loans, including mortgages, cars, credit cards. 1 in 22 consumers missed at least one debt payment in early 2025, according to Canadian Mortgage Trend. And there's also evidence that about 20% of renewing homeowners had to use other credit, like credit cards or lines of credit, to cover their mortgage debts, according to a recent CMHC report, which is just not sustainable long term. This kind of financial stress can delay people's other life plans, saving for retirement, etc., and generally makes consumers more cautious. And there's an economic ripple effect to be seen here as well. We have a huge chunk of people now diverting more income to mortgage payments. Consumer spending can slow down, and we're already seeing consumer spending slowing down. This means less money for restaurants, travel, new appliances, renovations, whatever, the things that keep the economy going, buying a new car, whatever. And the Bank of Canada has explicitly flagged this, that higher mortgage payments could cause Canadian households to cut back on spending, potentially slowing the economy.
Yes, because ultimately when you have a lot more money going towards something like a mortgage, you don't have the excess money that you normally would have to spend out in the economy, which is helping, again, businesses, small businesses, restaurants. All of that money flows to help give other businesses income. And if you're being squeezed, everyone ultimately is being squeezed, unless there's another, amount of cash that's going to be sent out, maybe in CERB checks or something, so they can stimulate the economy again. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's just going to add more fuel to the fire. Anyways, guys, leave your thoughts down below about this video's subject, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.